Most NHL careers end with a handshake. Brian Spencer ended up in a Florida pickup truck. One father was shot dead by Mounties the night he played on Hockey Night in Canada. One murder trial, one acquittal. Then a stranger with a gun and $3 in pocket change. He had every reason to live quietly. He couldn't. To understand how a man ends up bleeding out over $3 in a Florida parking lot, you have to go 950 kilometers north of Vancouver to a place most Canadians have never heard of: Fort St. James, British Columbia. A former fur trading post carved into the interior, frozen more than half the year, isolated enough that the nearest television signal came from 84 miles away. This is where Brian Spencer was born, on September 3rd, 1949, alongside his twin brother Byron. Their mother Irene was a school teacher. Their father Roy was something harder to summarize: a World War II commando, a skilled mechanic, a gravel pit operator, a hard drinker with a stern streak and a specific obsession. Roy Spencer wanted a son in the NHL, so he built one. Not metaphorically. Literally. He bought a tract of land piece by piece outside Fort St. James and constructed an outdoor rink on it with his own hands. Every winter, that rink became the classroom. Roy taught both boys everything he knew about the game through the long northern nights, and he taught it the way he did everything else: relentlessly, with no tolerance for softness, and with a bottle never far from reach. Byron had talent, but eventually walked away. Brian couldn't. In the Spencer house, hockey wasn't a hobby. It was the condition of his father's approval. That approval cost him. By his mid-teens, Brian was already drinking, a habit he picked up at home from the man coaching him. His behavior got out of hand. He was sent to a reform school, then to a foster home. Brian wasn't skilled. He wasn't talented. Scouts didn't circle his name. What he had was a willingness to hurt people on the ice that went further than the next kids. That was the currency Roy had trained him in, and it finally paid out. In 1969, the Toronto Maple Leafs drafted him 55th overall, 5th round, a project pick. A left winger they figured could fight. Nobody in that draft room was imagining a star, just a role player who wouldn't back down. For a boy from Fort St. James, 55th overall was the whole world. The rink in the woods had been worth it. His father had been right. He had escaped the town. What he didn't know yet was that the town wasn't the problem. It takes more than a year from his first NHL appearance for his big moment to come. Brian bounces between Toronto and their minor league affiliate in Tulsa, grinding through the kind of purgatory most 55th overall picks never climb out of. Then, in December 1970, the Maple Leafs brought him up. They tell him he'll dress for a Saturday night game against the Chicago Blackhawks. Hockey Night in Canada is carrying it. And between periods, CBC wants him for an interview. This is the moment Roy Spencer had been building toward on that outdoor rink since Brian was a child. His son on national television in a Maple Leaf sweater. Brian picks up the phone and calls home. Roy sends back a telegram. 7 words. "Give them hell, son. We are mighty proud." And then Roy, normally an introverted man, does something out of character. He buys a bigger antenna to pull the signal from CKPG, the CBC affiliate 84 miles south in Prince George. He stalks the house. He tells everyone the drinks are on him. This is the night the investment pays out. The puck is scheduled to drop in Toronto in a few hours. Here's what Roy doesn't know. CKPG, acting as the regional CBC feed for Central British Columbia, has made a programming decision. They're not carrying the Maple Leafs game. They're carrying a different one: Vancouver Canucks versus the California Golden Seals, a matchup involving the local BC team. Roy sits down with his friends and family. The game comes on. It's the wrong game. What he does next, nobody who knew him could have predicted. And everyone who knew him, looking back, understood completely. Roy goes to his gun cabinet. He loads firearms and ammunition into his car. Then he drives 84 miles through the BC interior at night alone toward Prince George. He pulls up to the CKPG building. He walks inside. and he takes 8 staff members hostage at gunpoint. He lines them up in the studio. The program manager, the studio operator, a news reporter who had just picked up the phone. Roy is pointing a pistol at all of them. He tells them to turn off the television. He tells them the CBC has a problem. And then he says something the hostages would remember for the rest of their lives. He tells them, "I have killed before. I killed many times in the Commandos." One of the employees turns off the studio monitors. Someone manages to contact the police. Within minutes, RCMP officers are assembling outside the station. Nobody is entirely sure what happened in the final seconds. Some accounts point to kidney failure affecting Roy's judgments. Others point to untreated trauma from his commando service. What is certain is that Roy Spencer crouched and fired first, hitting one RCMP officer in the foot. Police returned fire. Roy Spencer, 57 years old, was killed in front of the station. Brian played the full game. He gave his between periods interview, dressed his father in accolades in front of a national audience, and went back out for the next shift. He didn't know his father's body was on the ground 84 miles from home. The next night, the Maple Leafs played in Buffalo. Brian suited up. He recorded assists in a win. He attended his father's funeral 4 days later. He would play professional hockey for 9 more years. He would almost never speak about that night. They started calling him Spinner for the way he skated, aggressive and unpredictable, like something was chasing him. The name followed him to every franchise that picked him up. Toronto didn't know what to do with him. They kept him, sent him back to Tulsa, brought him up again. After his second season, they left him unprotected in the 1972 expansion draft, and the brand new New York Islanders grabbed him. Long Island is where something strange started to show. On the ice, Spinner was exactly what Roy had trained. A grinder, an instigator, a man who would drop the gloves at the first opportunity and finish a shift with blood on his sweater. He piled up penalty minutes. 634 of them by the end of his career. Off the ice, he was a different person entirely. Teammates described him as affable, warm, funny, the kind of guy who puts rookies at ease. He made friends fast. Islanders fans noticed. In his first full season with the team, the franchise's own booster club voted him most popular Islander. There's a story from a teammate of Spencer physically pulling another Islander off a reporter who'd been about to throw a punch over something he'd written. That was the other Spencer, the one Roy's training never touched. The contrast wasn't a contradiction. It was the whole story. In March 1974, the Islanders traded him to the Buffalo Sabres for Doug Rombo. This is where he hit his peak. In 1974-75, he put up career highs. 12 goals, 29 assists, 41 points. That spring, Buffalo went on a run that took them all the way to the Stanley Cup final against the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers won in 6. Bernie Parent, the Flyers goalie who beat him, would later describe Spencer as awesome, tough, and a good player. That's as close as Spinner ever got. After that, the decline was fast. In September 1977, Buffalo traded him to Pittsburgh. His offensive numbers collapsed. The Penguins used him as a checking forward, a body to eat minutes. By the 1978-79 season, he played just 7 NHL games. The rest of the year, he spent in the minors. Binghamton, then Springfield, then Hershey, the graveyard leagues, where careers go to quietly die. He retired after 1979-80. He was 30 years old. 2 marriages behind him, 5 children between them, 553 NHL games in the book, and absolutely no plan for what came next. The rink, the nickname, the Stanley Cup final, all of it was behind him. The man built for one thing was done, and nothing was waiting on the other side. He went south immediately. Palm Beach, the moment he retired. He took work as a part-time auto mechanic and a machinist, the trades his father had taught him as a backup, back when Roy was planning for everything. He drank more heavily than he had as a player. He started using substances. He moved into a trailer in West Palm Beach with a woman named Diane DeLina. a former escort who was working for an outfit called Fantasy Island Escort Services. On the night of February 4th, 1982, Delena went out on a call. The client was a 29-year-old real estate agent named Michael Dalfo, who lived in a condo at the PGA National Resort Complex. Dalfo had a substance habit and had called Fantasy Island 3 times that night. Delena went over. Dalfo ran out of cash. She left. According to her later testimony, he chased her outside and she was afraid he'd follow her home. She got back to the trailer and told Spencer about it. They went back together. The next afternoon, a truck driver on his way to a sewage treatment plant off PGA Boulevard noticed something lying in a clearing of pine trees about 60 feet off the road. He thought it was a dummy. On his way back, he saw a buzzard circling above it. He stopped and walked over. Michael Dalfo was dressed in a black bikini bathing suit. He had a gold chain around his neck. He had been shot twice at close range in the head with a .25 caliber pistol. He was still breathing when the paramedics arrived. He was pronounced dead at the hospital at 3:36 p.m. The case sat for almost 5 years. Nothing happened. Then, in January 1987, prosecutors offered Diane Delena partial immunity. She took it. She told a grand jury that Spencer had killed Dalfo. An FBI soil expert placed her shoes at the scene. Spencer was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and kidnapping. The state announced it would seek the death penalty. His old hockey life came back for him. Former Islander Jerry Hart put up his $50,000 bond. His former Sabres teammate Rick Martin flew down to testify as a character witness. The defense team at the Palm Beach Public Defender's Office, led by Barry Weinstein, started pulling apart the state's case. The trial opened in West Palm Beach in October 1987. The defense produced a bartender who placed Spencer at his workplace during the window of the killing. They argued that Fantasy Island Escort Service operated in an orbit full of dangerous people. People with far better motive and opportunity to kill Dalfo than Spencer had. They went after Delena's credibility. Another witness who had worked with Spencer testified that the state's key witness was a habitual liar. On October 16, 1987, the jury went out to deliberate at 2:13 in the afternoon. They were back in little over an hour. The verdict was read at 3:30, not guilty, on both counts. Spencer's former teammates broke into applause in the courtroom. His family had already scheduled a party at the public defender's office for 5 p.m. because they were so confident in the outcome. He walked out a free man, vowing to change his life. A book about him, Gross Misconduct by journalist Martin O'Malley, was in the works, and he was excited about it. He was 38 years old. For the first time in a long time, the future looked like it might exist. Less than a year later, on the night of June 2nd, 1988, he was riding through Riviera Beach with a friend named Gregory Cook. They had been bar hopping for hours. They had bought a substance and were looking for a place to use it. Cook pulled over and turned on the dome lights. That was when a car pulled up alongside and boxed the pickup in. 2 men got out. They came to the driver's side window with guns. They demanded money. Cook gave them everything he had in his pockets, $3. Spencer refused. He told them off. One of the men fired a single round. It entered through Spencer's arm, passed through a lung, through his heart, and into his liver. Cook managed to get the truck to a nearby fire station. Paramedics took Spencer to St. Mary's Hospital in West Palm Beach. He was pronounced dead at 12:12 a.m. on June 3rd, 1988. He was 38. 2 men were later arrested and convicted. Larry Willie Johnson, sentenced to 40 years, and Leon Daniels, sentenced to 18. Roy Spencer was shot by police on December 12, 1970, after walking into a television station with loaded firearms because someone wouldn't show him his son on TV. Brian Spencer was shot by a stranger on June 2nd, 1988, because he wouldn't hand over $3. 18 years apart. 2 men from the same family, both killed, refusing to back down from something nobody else in the room could understand was worth dying for. The question was never whether Brian Spencer pulled the trigger on Michael Dalfo. The jury gave their answer in an hour. The real question is the one no one thought to ask while he was still alive. Who was he really being in that last second in the pickup truck when 2 armed men pointed guns at him and he told them no. He walked out of that courtroom a free man and was dead 8 months later. Some people just can't outrun the life that was built for them. Agree or disagree? Comments are open. If this story stayed with you, a super thanks goes a long way in helping me dig into the next one. And please hit subscribe, because the next story I'm telling is one that people have never heard and they certainly won't forget.